Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Daily Objective. And we've got a hot topic today. Turns out Joe Biden, the president, says that Facebook is killing people by allowing misinformation or alleged misinformation related to COVID and the vaccines. I think what Biden is getting at is that there should be no anti-vaccine or even skepticism related to the vaccine allowed on social media because it can very well lead to death and the ongoing spreading of COVID-19 and its various mutations and iterations and incarnations. Anyway, here to help me understand what the heck is going on, as well as to explore the topic with me, is a guy from Greece itself. Although right now he's probably in England, although I would not, nope, he's in Greece itself, where he belongs because he is Greek. Please welcome Nikos Sotirakopoulos.
Thank you very much, Rucka. So the thing itself was a bit weird. So Biden walks towards the cameras and he looks a bit like he wants to say something irrespective of what the question is. So he says they're killing people. Now, it's unclear to me, at least, whether he means social media is killing people or whether he means people who spread misinformation are killing people. Either way, I think the topic is important because this is not an isolated incident. As we're going to say later, last week, Boris Johnson, the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, also attacked social media, actually threatened social media. So the title that I had in mind, but I didn't coordinate properly with the Lord Emperor behind the scenes, was why always me? If I were Facebook, that's what I would say. Why always me? And of course, you know my view about the politics of Facebook. I don't endorse them by any means. But here we have a big injustice. So let's look a bit at the data on what exactly is happening here. So the big narrative of these days is the anti-vaxxers and this idea that we have the vaccines that are proven quite effective even against the Delta variant. And there's only one weak point. There's only one weak link in our defense. And this link is the people who aren't getting vaccinated. This is why Biden said something like, there is a pandemic only among the unvaccinated. Now, of course, as everyone who has watched the show knows that we're big fans of, quote, big pharma and of the vaccines. However, I think the way we deal with the, quote, anti-vaxxers actually fuels their message. Because for me, the most reassuring thing would be, look, some nutters claim that the vaccines are going to give you, I don't know, there's a chip inside. Here's why this is BS. Others claim that this is going to give you HIV. I even heard this. This is why this is completely BS. And last week, for example, I saw that the CDC added to the precautions of Johnson & Johnson that it can lead to one of the very quite bad autoimmune responses. And then with small letters under the headline, you would see something like 1 in 120,000 cases. So imagine you're someone who you've been bombarded with fear throughout the last 16, 18 months. And at the same time, you hear the news. Actually, this is the news. This is not your anti-vaxxer friend, that this vaccine can cause this. Or think about how often European governments went back and forth with the AstraZeneca vaccine. You remember we had a whole episode about that. Because precautionary principle tells you that even if it's 1 in 120,000, you have to put it out there and to tell people, look, I need to protect you from that risk. So I think that in a way, the dominant narrative has in some ways also undermined the vaccines. And it has undermined it in a way which for me is inexcusable because these people should know better. So that's the one part. The other part is there is no better defense than telling people the truth. And telling people the truth is, look, like paracetamol, the vaccines will have some counter effects. So I would like my prime minister to say, look, I know you people don't understand statistics too much, but let me tell it to you simple. You put anything in your body, you have 1 in 100,000, something bad happens to you. You get the virus, you get, let's say, 1 in 100 that something bad happens to you. Make the decision. Instead, we've had ministers saying, no, don't hear anyone. Nothing is going to happen. They're 100% safe. And then the same people say, oh, but don't go and do AstraZeneca because we want to check it again because 1 in 100,000 something happened. So you see that I'm not too eager to say that the problem here is the nutters or the anti-vaxxers or whatever. And I think that the governors have to ask questions to themselves on why this miracle, actually not miracle, this achievement of mass vaccination and their success against the virus, why not as many people as would want have completely been sold on this.
Quick super chat. We got Jonathan Honig with $4.99 asking, is Nikos's beard vaccinated? Robert with $2 says to Jonathan, Nikos's beard is a sovereign entity. And Jeff with $5 Canadian says, keep it up. All right. Now, I've long said we live in the Tower of Babel. It's a very difficult time to try to communicate with people when people have gone so far down their various rabbit holes. So some people, no matter what the media says, they will, like the mainstream media says, they will believe the opposite. Alternative media is supposed to be like, the people's media, right? Like that you can just bypass CNN and Fox and establishment media, legacy media, and just go straight from a guy in his house over to the people. One problem is the guy in his house has no credentials, nothing to back up, no sources. There's really no reason to believe anything he says or to trust that he knows what the heck he's talking about. But this guy, this alternative media guy, now becomes the biggest source of information and infotainment. And it just, and we get a population of people that don't even know like who to turn to. They distrust these guys, they trust those guys, or they distrust everyone. They don't know what the heck this disease even is, what the vaccine is, what the government is saying. They believe the opposite, or depending on which party is in power, they believe the government. It's impossible to communicate. I mean, people, have spoken about, why don't we just split into 2 countries in America? But even that wouldn't be enough. This is not just a bipartisan phenomenon. It just looks that way now. It would eventually we would be balkanizing into tiny little states and countries, and that the sort of the trail this is leading us to, the ultimate ending place of this process would be living as tribal little groups in the jungle. That's really where this goes us to, because we need philosophy to live as civilized people. We need a clear epistemology. We need a clear way to understand what is true. How do I know? Whose job is it to discover kind of what's true, like to discover facts on the ground related to medicine, related to viruses, related to other things, scientists, and how do we delegate labor related to the accumulation and collecting of knowledge? These are things that a civilization needs. And when the mainstream media has become so partisan, as well as the fact that when there's a profit, a sort of business model around bullshitting, like just kind of riling up people and saying, no, don't trust anyone. Don't trust anyone. Don't take the vaccine. Don't take the vaccine. When, look, as much as we're fans of the profit motive, but when there is a business model whose profit is in scaring people and making them distrust everyone and to doubt everything, we are living in the Tower of Babel. God help us all. Looking back at the super chat, CJ with $5 Canadian says the vaccine has killed people. The government pushes the vaccine. By the same logic Biden used, the government is, quote, killing people. Not sure what part of that is meant to say don't take the vaccine, but YouTube, if you're watching this, we were just reading a super chat. Ban the super chatter before you ban us. Robert with $5 says, seriously though, is posting misinformation on social media an instance of reckless endangerment? Is Facebook liable if they allow it? And this brings up again the question of, when Facebook is banning conservatives or right-wing lunatics, whatever you'd call them, nationalist, Holocaust denying conspiracy theorists, when Facebook bans one of them, you suddenly see people going up in arms and saying, whoa, is Facebook a publisher or a platform? Okay, now Facebook is not banning, they're not banning, let's say, vaccine misinformation. Now we believe, or I believe, Facebook is a platform, so they're not legally responsible for anything, for what people are posting on their website necessarily. They're not automatically liable for it. But if it is proven that they are allowing misinformation to grow and it is leading to problems, like at what point does the law start to say Facebook needs to be less negligent? And will the same people who who earlier said Facebook is acting like a publisher and should be treated as such, should that now Facebook be allowing vaccine misinformation or alleged misinformation? If by those same people, are they going to say, yes, Facebook should delete all vaccine misinformation if it's not properly vetted by credible sources? God help me. But one more quick super chat. Marilyn with $5 says, get a grip, people. If you don't like Facebook, don't use it. Maybe read a book. Maybe Nikos's book. That's great advice. Remember, everyone, get Nikos Sotirakopoulos' book. Link probably in the description. Back to you, Nikos.
By the way, I was checking, I think it was the vice president of Facebook who made a communique about all this. And if you see the amount of posts they have deleted, it's so basically he tried to say, no, we are doing our best. But the number of posts they've deleted, and we're talking about in the millions, it's, again, I'm not 100% sure that, for example, the mere fact that we now freak out because someone said on the super chat, vaccines have killed people. Well, prawns have killed people. I have a cousin who almost died because he was allergic to prawns. Of course, some people will be allergic to the vaccine. Of course, some people will be allergic to aspirin. But I seeing ourselves going now to the other extreme, that we are even afraid to mention that, yes, of course, it will happen statistically. Now, we don't know if it caused it. Statistically, when you walk out of a building, you might die. If we see a lot of these incidents, we might say, yeah, maybe some people had the reaction. But the mere fact that now we are afraid to even question it, again, we are big proponents of the vaccine. This is not the way to win people's hearts and minds. But I think here the most interesting thing is what you said, Rucka, why there's such an institutional crisis, that some people are so committed to the belief that the government and the powers that be are out there to destroy them. And think about it. What type of sick plan is this, that the government wants to exterminate, I don't know what part of the population? Like, I know people in ruling circles in Greece. I know people around the prime minister. These people have taken the vaccine. So the prime minister is so bad that he wants to destroy his family. Like, I really wonder what is their view of the world. Again, I also share their skepticism with the media. We've seen that. And actually, we've seen, for example, Facebook hiding the Hunter Biden story. But from this to believing that there's this conspiracy to what? To destroy the whole Earth population, and you would start with Israel, with United Kingdom and the United States, like this is the plan, that I really don't get it. But let's go back to the issue of the politics around Facebook, because for me that's the most interesting thing. So let's move to another story, and this is the story that we touched upon last week, which is the racist attacks by some people, luckily not that many, to the players of the national team of England, the players who missed the penalty. They received racist abuse. Now, as we said, or not as we said, as data showed, the majority of these attacks were from outside the United Kingdom. And so the people who could be identified were not that many. However, notice what was the political use of the story. So Boris Johnson, the Prime Minister, said, and I quote, that if social media, unless they get hate, this is a quote, unless they get hate and racism off their platform, they will face fines amounting to 10% of their global revenues. We all know they have the technology to do it. So if I were the CEO of Facebook, after all these things, what I would do, I would go full Ellis Wyatt. I would say, sorry, people, I gave you something of value, and you think that because I did quite well, now I'm your servant. I'm trying to do my best. If you think you could run a better Facebook, feel free, create your own Facebook. Of course you can, because you couldn't even run a candy store. But this idea that, this blackmail that if you don't run your business the better way, we're gonna fine you up to 10% of your global profits, I say, okay, I have money for even my grandchildren. Goodbye, everyone. I'm going to a house by the sea for the rest of my life. And basically, I'm showing you not these two fingers, the fingers beside these two fingers. Because it's really, really unjust. It's really unjust. And notice how some other politicians made use of it. Here is someone from the SNP, the Scottish National Party. The UK government own report on racism. So the context here was that the government created a report that said there is no institutional racism. And this politician said, after the shocking racism on show over the last week, does the Prime Minister still stand by his government's belief that systemic racism is not a problem that exists in the United Kingdom? So this guy believes that 170 trolls or 170 people who might have an agenda to create this whole turmoil is the same thing as systemic racism. So notice how power hungry these politicians are against Facebook, but not only against Facebook, how power hungry they are to create this idea that this society is in turmoil, that there's these basket cases around and we need somehow to intervene. So again, as I've said many times, I'm very, very concerned with Facebook and its politics. I don't know who is worse here. No, actually, I know. The government is worse because they have the power of coercion. And also, one more interesting pieces of news that, of course, no one has any problem with it. We heard in the news that a man has been arrested after racist social media posts were directed towards England's players following the Euro 2020 final. A post was made on the evening of July 11th. Now, what was in this post, we don't know. Detective Inspector Matt Gregory of X department said, the actions of a small number of people overshadowed what was a hugely unifying event for our country. We are firm in our commitment. Any racist abuse, whether online or off, is not acceptable. Now, do you see here the gap between words and actions? So how we went from racism should be ostracized, morally reprehensible, which I agree. Now there's a consensus that these people need to be arrested. Again, we don't know what they said. And for me, the line would be, and it's not an easy question, is this, for example, a threat or is this an opinion? Because if someone says something like, I believe you are inferior, Rucka, because your hair goes like that.
Black. So
it's quite difficult in this political climate to say, you know what, people, this still might fall within free speech. Free speech doesn't mean things that we like or things like we agree. You might be reprehensible. You might be morally of the lowest of the low, and yet you still might fall in what we understand as free speech. The question is, did you break anyone's rights? Of course, Facebook has the right to kick you off. Of course, I would say maybe you should be again ostracized. But now this consensus that the police should knock on your door because a social media post was made and with no idea what was there, I'm a bit worried here. Again, zero discussion. Now this thing is considered self-evident. Yeah, you said something racist, and the next step is going to be racist or offensive. Notice how, again, we go from a law which is less and less and less objective.
Yeah. So a threat or incitement of violence has always been, it should always be considered a type of violence when you're actually threatening or inciting violence. But what European countries have done for a while is they've outlawed hate speech, what they call hate speech. And it started with them outlawing a Holocaust denial. And of course, it ended up with saying, like, if you just say a racial slur, then you're breaking the law. So, of course, in America, we've got the First Amendment, which you don't have in Europe. And any advocate of individual rights ought to say abolish all hate speech laws. Either something is incitement to violence and should be considered violence, or it is just a type of speech and we can boycott the person privately, but we may not use force and government force against that person. Social media, people have been getting arrested for tweets for a while. As long as Twitter's been around, you've had British people getting arrested for saying racial slurs and racist jokes, even often about, football players, as you call them, soccer players. on Twitter and stuff like that. So this is not new, but it is going to be more complex when you have Twitter and others like them, other companies like them, sort of in the hot seat, like, and people asking, is this a publisher or a platform? Is it Facebook's job to abolish hateful language by law, according to England's hate speech laws, or is that up to Facebook? That's, in America, the question is is easier to answer because there's no hate speech laws in America. But in England, Facebook and others like Facebook probably have a tough question. Like, is Facebook going to get in legal trouble for not doing a diligent enough job banning and reporting possibly hateful language or allegedly hateful language? This is what happens when we blur the lines between private property and public property. And then on top of that, we blur the line between free speech and quote hate speech or like make hate speech quote unquote not protected by the rights of the individual. It only complicates things further. It's going to be very difficult for people to live as free individuals. Very difficult for people to trade and coexist with other people, which is why we're going to be turning into smaller and smaller tribes. And over time, on the route that we're heading, either we're going to end up under one big dictatorship, or we're going to branch off into small little tribes, as the book Identity, Politics, and Tribalism alludes to.
Okay. So, and I think I overwhelmed the crowd a bit because I threw two different things on the table. The one is that, by the way, can I ask you this? Why do you think that these people don't go full Ellis Wyatt? They have money and they keep getting more and more and more trouble by doing their job. They're getting into more and more trouble, and soon they might be even in legal trouble.
They're not Ellis Wyatt, and a lot of them, they would like the government to regulate them and basically grandfather them in place. So Facebook will be the official social media site, and Twitter will be the official tweeting media site. Like they're not necessarily free market people, as much as they benefited from the free market and from, the sort of early days of Silicon Valley. They would, a lot of them, sadly, they would be happy to marry the government.
But sorry, Rucka, this is not about your politics. This is about your character. How do you allow someone to bully and micromanage you to that way when they need you? You shouldn't need them. Again, you have money to live 18 lives of unimaginable luxury. And I understand you want to be productive, you want to create, but when they actually threaten you, when they drag you to the Senate or the Congress, and you have even supposedly your allies, like Ted Cruz, grilling you. Like, why don't you say, okay, you know what? I've given job to so many people, because again, they're altruists. I don't expect a speech, right, like speech who says, I could have told you how I've helped you, but I won't, because I don't expect my life to be lived as basically a blackmail. But they could speak their loud and say, look, I've given job to so many people. Silicon Valley is the last especially productive part perhaps of this country. So again, sorry, but I leave it as I found it, or whatever was this brilliant Ellis Wyatt, the sign that he put to his oil fields when he
I leave it as I found it, something like that.
Yeah. I leave them. Leave them as I found them. Take over. It's yours.
Look,
perhaps the only really beautiful scene from the horrible films trilogy. The final scene of the first film is nice.
When it comes to the question of like how to spread objectivism, like how to make the world more familiar with Ayn Rand's ideas and how to get these ideas into the culture. It's occurred to me that kind of the more students are exposed to it, or just generally people are exposed to the philosophy, it's quite possible that the next Jeff Bezos or the next Zuckerberg or both might be objectivist or very cozy with it. And next thing you know, like some of those brilliant people are snapping their fingers and kind of getting the philosophy out there in a way that was unimaginable with the speed that was unimaginable. So it could be that maybe the next generation of Silicon Valley titans will have a better philosophy than the current ones. But currently, we've got a generation of Silicon Valley titans who are, I think, often familiar with and even somewhat affectionate towards Ayn Rand's ideas, but not nearly enough. So they're perfectly fine getting dragged in front of Congress, and in their mind, well, I'm working with Congress. We're gonna figure this out. We're gonna see what works. Good luck with that. Dancing with the devil. All right, super chat.
Oh, do you remember that trance song "Dance with the Devil" from the early 2000s? It was a major success in Greece.
Luckily, I got out of Europe in the year 2000, so I
also because I don't want to butcher the quote. I'm leaving it as I found it. Take over. It's yours.
Mm-hmm. Okay, super chat from Phil, 20 pounds. He says, forget anti-vax rights or wrong scientifically. I don't believe government should be involved in what should or not be taken. What say you? I agree. Of course, the government should not be able to tell anybody what to take. By the way, we've got a sponsored episode by Phil a week from today, if that's the same Phil. I'm assuming it is. We were going to do it today, where we respond to a particular video, long form lecture video that he sent us. We were going to do it today, but Mark Pellegrino is busy making a TV show. Apparently, making TV shows now is more important than this, but I'm joking.
I have 4 pages of notes for that episode, so I really appreciate your support, and be assured that we are giving our best for that episode. So I've got 4 pages of notes for that.
Okay, Marilyn with $2 says cemeteries are risk-free for the residents. Where's the lie? Roland with €5.49 says, what's a Nucka? If you don't know, then I can't tell you. Enric with $4.99 says,
wait, the guy gave money. Tell him.
No. Enric with $4.99 says, many entrepreneurs may believe they're so capable that they'll find a way to work out many entrepreneurs may believe they're so capable that they'll find a way to work out the government control. Yeah, I mean, any of us who are operating in the modern world are on that premise, right? The question is, when I have an opportunity to challenge the government, imagine me in front of Congress, imagine you in front of Congress. I mean, we saw Alex Epstein there a number of times, right? Once over Zoom and another time in person. And he's not there as a businessman being kind of with his feet to the fire, but he is there with the ability to give his opinion. But imagine, if I'm a guy with my loud mouth is, let's say, the CEO of Facebook. Imagine how I would take that opportunity, or you, right? It is true that we're assuming we can survive in this with these regulations. But the question is, kind of, when we have an opportunity to change it, to challenge it, what are we going to do? Are we going to work with Congress, or are we going to give them the finger and say, back off? Apollo with 10 pounds. Thank you for that. Yeah, anyway, but Nucka it's one of my fans, Rucka's Nuckas. Anyway, that's not what we're not here to talk about that. Although I guess I'm wearing a shirt that prompts the question. But yeah, thanks for all the super chats. This is a wonderful day for super chats. Thank you, Big Tech, for giving us the infrastructure to make these transactions. Should we jump over to Clubhouse, or do you have some more thoughts? We got.
I think I was thinking of making a whole episode on how on earth we managed to make the vaccines part of the culture war. The more I think about it, is there anything in this world, like eating meat is now part of the culture wars? The vaccines are part of the culture wars. Sports are part of the culture wars. Traveling is now a part of the culture wars because of the restriction, although even before it was with carbon footprint. Is there anything in life that is not someone wants to grab something and someone wants to impose something? Anyway.
I mean, look, there's
fall against all, as someone said.
I mean, social media has come to be a partisan sort of culture war issue. But like a couple years ago, we had Trump tweeting out, we are looking closely at Facebook right now. We are looking closely at Facebook, when Facebook was banning, let's say, Milo Yiannopoulos and people like that. Trump was tweeting out, we're closely looking at Facebook. Sounded a lot like a threat. And a lot of conservatives, or whatever you'd call them, people on the non-left, have been and still are saying that Facebook mustn't have the right to ban people based on their opinion. So they're basically saying Facebook should not be allowed to ban people based on their opinion on anything. And So if Trump, if Republicans were in power currently, then Facebook needs to worry about, okay, well, we don't want to face any lawsuits or legislation coming from that direction. Now there's Democrats in power and they've got to worry about, well, okay, we don't want to allow certain opinions on our platform because we could end up being told, oh, by the way, you're responsible for whatever happens on your website. Guys, we need a better philosophy in the culture. Please read Ayn Rand, or I'm going to delete my own existence. I'm joking, of course. I'm not going to do that. All right, jump over to Clubhouse.
Yes, thanks so much. Oh, wait.
Yeah, we got an announcement.
How it's called, the announcements.
Announcements, we call them. Should I say it? 8 p.m. Coming up at 8 p.m. UK time, HBTV. Harry Binswanger discusses Canada's totalitarian response to COVID. There you go, CJ. There you go, everybody. Canada's totalitarian response to COVID. You're going to love it. See you back here in about an hour and a half less on
28 minutes from now. Amanda Maxam, physics by phone.
Mm-hmm.
And right now, me and Rucka, let's hear if any of our viewers has anything to say on this on Clubhouse, okay?
Guys, we got nonstop content coming your way. Please become an Ayn Rand Center UK member and continue to support us. Thank you for all the super chats today. See you back here tomorrow for the Daily Objective. And goodbye.
Thank you.